In the depths of space, aboard the starship Nova Sentinel, Commander Lira Kalthar stared at the flickering screens in the dimly lit control room. Her crew had just captured a human pilot, a rare achievement that sent ripples of excitement through the ranks. The tales of humanity's audacity and ingenuity had reached even the farthest corners of the galaxy. Now she had one right in front of her. Lira gathered her thoughts as she prepared to enter the interrogation chamber. This could change everything, she whispered to herself, remembering the briefings about humans. They were clever, unpredictable, and not easily intimidated. As she stepped through the heavy door, the low hum of the ship surrounded her, and the air felt charged with tension. Inside, the human sat restrained at a metallic table, his messy hair falling into his eyes. He wore a uniform adorned with insignia that suggested a rank among his people. Despite the restraints binding his arms and legs, he wore a smirk, as if amused by the situation. "So, you've finally come to interrogate me, huh?" he said in a relaxed tone. Commander Kalthar cleared her throat. "I am Commander Lira Kalthar of the Nova Sentinel. You are a prisoner of war." The human chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "A prisoner? Or a guest? I guess it depends on your perspective." Lira took a deep breath, attempting to maintain her authority. "You will answer my questions, and you will do so honestly. Why were you in this sector?" "Fair enough," he replied, leaning back. "But I think we should get to know each other first. What's your name again?" "Lira? Sounds exotic." Frustration simmered beneath Lira's calm exterior. She quickly dismissed his attempt at distraction. "We know you humans have a knack for lying. Start by telling me what you know about the Galactic Coalition." "Sure, but let's make this interesting. How about you tell me something about your species first?" His eyes twinkled with mischief, a stark contrast to the serious atmosphere. Lira wasn't going to let him derail her. "Your lack of cooperation will only lead to more severe consequences." "Speak," she ordered. Okay, but you're really missing the point here," he said, leaning forward as much as his restraints would allow. "You're sitting there all serious, but we both know I'm not just some mindless soldier. I'm here because of decisions made far above my head." Lira frowned, realizing he was right. Humans had often acted on principles, not orders. "What do you mean?" "Simple," he replied, his tone shifting to something more serious. "I'm here because we wanted to explore. Our mission was scientific. We didn't come to wage war." As he spoke, Lira's curiosity grew. The human was unlike any prisoner she had encountered. He didn't fit the mold of a typical enemy, and his words held an unexpected weight. "And yet your people have caused significant damage to various species. How do you justify that?" The human's expression shifted, revealing a hint of sadness. "We didn't realize the consequences of our actions. We thought we were alone, that we could explore uncharted territories without affecting anyone. But we were wrong." His honesty caught Lira off guard. It was unusual for an enemy to openly acknowledge their faults. She sensed an opportunity here, a chance to learn rather than simply extract information. "So, what happened next?" The human leaned back, clearly relishing the chance to share his story. "After our first wave of exploration, we realized that we weren't alone. There were other civilizations, and we had made a mess of things. The Council decided to change our approach. No more colonizing life-bearing planets. Instead, we focused on restoring what we could and protecting the ecosystems we found." "Why should I believe you?" Lira challenged, though her interest was piqued. "Because I'm here, aren't I? I could have tried to escape, or worse, sabotage your ship. But I'm talking to you instead. That means something." Commander Kalthar paused, contemplating his words. This human's perspective was refreshing, even enlightening. Perhaps there was more to this interrogation than mere questions and answers. "What's your name?" "Call me Jake," he said with a smile. "Jake Reynolds." "Very well, Jake. Let's continue this conversation," Lira decided, sensing that the course of this encounter might redefine their understanding of humanity. With each passing moment, the rigid lines of enemy and ally began to blur. Little did they know, their exchange would set off a chain of events that would challenge not just their beliefs, but the very fabric of the galaxy itself. As the hours passed, in the interrogation chamber, Lira and Jake delved deeper into discussions about their respective cultures and histories. The human shared stories of his people's triumphs and tragedies, illustrating their boundless curiosity and the mistakes that had marred their path to the stars. "Every explorer has to learn the hard way," Jake said, his tone earnest. "We've made mistakes, but we're trying to do better. We're not monsters, even if we've acted like it in the past." Lira was captivated. She had entered the chamber, expecting to confront a foe, but instead, she found herself forging an unexpected connection. Tell me about the Council's decision to change your ways. What does that mean for you? Jake leaned forward, his eyes reflecting a determination that Lira couldn't help but admire. It means we prioritize life over conquest now. We're working to mend what we've broken. That's why I'm here. I was sent to study your people, to understand how we can coexist. The commander raised an eyebrow. Coexistence? You think that's possible? Absolutely. But it requires trust and understanding. I believe we can learn from each other. You have wisdom in your traditions, and we have the ability to adapt rapidly. Together, we could achieve great things. Lira considered his words carefully. The concept of working alongside a human seemed radical yet exhilarating. What if the others don't agree? There are factions within my people who see humans as threats. Then we find a way to change their minds, Jake proposed, his voice steady. We demonstrate our commitment to peace and cooperation. We show them that we can be allies, not enemies. Just then, the chamber door slid open, and one of Lira's officers stepped in, a concerned look on his face. Commander, we have an issue. Some of the crew are advocating for your prisoner to be executed. Lira's heart raced. What? Why? They believe he poses a risk to our safety and our mission. They think that sparing him will make us appear weak. Jake's expression turned serious. I knew this might happen. Your people are understandably cautious. But killing me won't solve anything. It will only deepen the conflict. Lira nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. I won't allow that to happen. You've shared too much for me to disregard your life. I believe we can find a solution. Thank you, Jake said, relief washing over his features. But we need to act quickly. If they think you're weak, they may turn against you too. Determined, Lira resolved to rally her crew. She called an emergency meeting where she would present her case for Jake's life and their shared vision for cooperation. The ship's command room was filled with her most trusted officers, each one apprehensive about the growing unrest among the ranks. Listen up, everyone, Lira began, her voice firm. We have a situation, and it concerns the human we captured. I know there are calls for his execution, but I urge you to consider what we've learned. This human, Jake, has the potential to help us understand a race we've long feared. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the room. One officer, Lieutenant Zahn, stood up. Commander, how can we trust him? His people have caused chaos throughout the galaxy. Because, Lira replied, her tone unwavering, Jake is not like other humans. He wants to make amends, to work towards peace. We can either continue this cycle of violence or take a step toward understanding. I still don't see how we can trust him, Zahn insisted. What if he's lying? Then we will keep him under surveillance. But I believe he deserves a chance, Lira countered, her eyes scanning the room for allies. We cannot let fear dictate our actions. If we kill him, we become no better than those we oppose. Gradually, some of the officers began to nod in agreement. The atmosphere shifted as they recognized the potential for a new path. After a tense discussion, Lira concluded, I ask you all to trust me. Let's give Jake a chance to prove that cooperation is possible. The crew was divided, but Lira's convictions sparked a flicker of hope in many. The meeting ended with a tentative agreement to allow Jake to live and to explore the possibility of an alliance. As Lira returned to the interrogation chamber, she felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. The future of their interactions hung in the balance, and she knew that every step forward would require courage and trust from both sides. When she entered, Jake looked up, his expression a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Did I hear you right? I'm not going to be executed? No, Lira affirmed, stepping closer to the table. I've convinced my crew to let you live, but you'll need to prove that you're sincere about this alliance. It's going to take time, Jake. A look of surprise crossed Jake's face, quickly replaced by a broad smile. Thank you, Commander. I promise I won't let you down, but we need to act quickly. There are still those who will want to see me dead. Lira nodded, feeling the weight of their new partnership. We have to show the rest of my crew that your intentions are genuine. Can you share more about your mission and what you hope to achieve with us? Jake leaned back, contemplating how to explain the nuances of human intentions. Our mission was to gather data on alien civilizations. We wanted to learn about different cultures, technologies, and philosophies. The goal was never conquest, but exploration and understanding. Understanding, Lira echoed, considering the word. What makes you think we can achieve that together? Because I believe in the resilience of both our species. Humans have faced countless challenges, and we've learned from them. We adapt, we grow. And if we can find a way to collaborate, we could reshape the future for both our peoples. As Lira listened, she realized how refreshing Jake's perspective was. It was easy to view humanity solely through the lens of their past transgressions, but he represented a new hope. We'll need to start with small steps. Perhaps we can create a joint task force, something that symbolizes our commitment to this alliance. Absolutely, Jake replied, his enthusiasm infectious. Let's start by sharing knowledge. I can provide insights into human technology, while you can show me the strengths of your own. Over the next few days, Lira and Jake worked together to outline the formation of the joint task force. They gathered a select group of officers from both species, focusing on individuals who were open-minded and eager to explore new ideas. During a meeting to introduce the initiative, Lira stood at the head of the table, flanked by Jake. Everyone, thank you for coming. Today marks a new beginning for our species. We're forming a joint task force to collaborate with Jake and his team. Our goal is to learn from each other and foster peace. Lieutenant Zahn, still skeptical, raised his hand. And what if this is just a ruse? What if humans have ulterior motives? Jake leaned forward, his expression earnest. I get it. You have every right to be cautious. But I assure you, my people are tired of conflict. We want to learn, not conquer. Slowly, the tension in the room began to ease as others voiced their support. Lira's heart swelled with hope. Perhaps they could build something great together. Days turned into weeks as the task force commenced operations. Lira and Jake worked side by side, demonstrating that collaboration was possible. They held joint training sessions, combining their unique techniques in combat and strategy. Lira taught Jake about her people's tactics, while Jake shared human innovations in technology and resource management. One evening, while reviewing data on a holographic display, Jake turned to Lira with a thoughtful expression. You know, I've learned a lot from you. Your species has a rich history of overcoming challenges. It's inspiring. Thank you, Lira replied, her voice softening. And you've taught me to see beyond our differences. Humanity's resilience is remarkable. You've faced setbacks, but continue to strive for improvement. Their shared respect laid the groundwork for a deepening friendship, and as they worked late into the night, laughter often punctuated their conversations. Each moment spent together forged a stronger bond, breaking down the barriers that had once defined them as enemies. However, not everyone was on board with their newfound alliance. Rumors began to circulate among the crew about Jake's presence, sowing seeds of dissent. Some viewed the partnership as a betrayal, a sign of weakness that would invite danger. One day, Lira received a distressing report. A group of crew members had gathered in the ship's commons, openly discussing their discontent with the alliance. The words traitor and danger were tossed around like grenades. Realizing the urgent need to address the unrest, Lira called an emergency meeting. As she stood before her crew, a wave of unease washed over her. I know there are concerns about our alliance with the human, she began, her voice steady. But I urge you all to listen. Jake is not our enemy. He's become an ally, and together we can ensure the safety of our worlds. Zahn stood up, anger simmering beneath the surface. Commander, this is madness. We're trusting a species that has caused havoc across the galaxy. What happens when they decide to turn on us? Then we'll be ready, Lira replied, her determination evident. But we cannot judge Jake based on the actions of others. He has shown us a different path, one that could lead to peace. As Lira spoke, she noticed Jake in the back of the room, his expression a mix of concern and determination. The tension in the air was palpable, and Lira could feel the eyes of her crew on both her and Jake. Let's put it to the test, Zahn proposed, crossing his arms defiantly. If he truly wants to help, let him prove it. We can set up a simulation, a mission where he must protect our interests. If he fails, we know where his loyalties lie. Jake stepped forward, undeterred by the challenge. I'm willing to take that risk. I understand the stakes, and I'm ready to show you what I can do. Trust is built through action, after all. Lira felt a swell of pride for Jake. Very well. We'll conduct the simulation. But I want everyone to understand that this isn't just about Jake. It's about all of us working together. With a mix of apprehension and hope, the crew agreed to the simulation, setting the stage for a crucial test of trust. The following days were filled with preparation. Lira and Jake collaborated closely to design a simulation that would test their combined capabilities. The goal was to infiltrate a mock enemy base, retrieve vital data, and escape without detection. As they trained together, the camaraderie between their teams grew stronger. Lira watched as Jake led his group through drills, demonstrating human tactics that were both innovative and effective. Focus on your surroundings, he instructed. Anticipate the enemy's moves, and remember that communication is key. During a break, Lira approached Jake, a hint of concern in her voice. Are you ready for this? If things go wrong, it could jeopardize our entire mission. Jake smiled reassuringly. I've faced tougher odds, but this time, I'm not alone. We're in this together, and that makes all the difference. The day of the simulation arrived, and tension hung in the air. Lira gathered her crew in the command center, reviewing the mission details. We'll split into teams, one to gather intel, and the other to provide support from a distance. Communication is critical. If we work as one, we can succeed. Jake stood at her side, his presence reassuring. Remember, this isn't just about individual skills. It's about our synergy as a team. As they prepared, Lira felt a surge of confidence. She believed in this alliance, and knew that their combined strengths could lead to something remarkable. Once inside the simulation chamber, the environment transformed into a realistic depiction of the mock enemy base. Alarms blared, and the atmosphere felt electric. Lira took a deep breath, focusing on the mission ahead. Team Alpha, move to the east wing, she instructed over the comms. Team Bravo, cover our backs and keep an eye on the perimeter. As they navigated through the simulated corridors, Lira observed Jake's team working seamlessly with hers. They communicated effectively, anticipating each other's movements as they approached their objective. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. They've detected us, one of Lira's officers shouted. Jake remained calm. We need to split up. Lira, lead your team toward the extraction point. I'll create a diversion. Are you sure? Lira asked, concern creeping into her voice. Trust me, I'll buy you time, Jake replied, determination etched on his face. With a quick nod, Lira made the decision. All right team, move. Stay low and stick to the shadows. As they hurried toward the extraction point, Lira couldn't help but glance back at Jake. He was already moving deeper into the enemy base, a silhouette against the chaos. She felt a mixture of fear and admiration. He was risking everything to protect them. Keep moving, she urged her team, pushing forward despite the tension. The team reached the extraction point and quickly began securing the area. They monitored the feeds from the simulation, watching as Jake expertly maneuvered through the simulated threats, drawing the enemy's attention away from them. Minutes felt like hours as Lira's heart raced. Come on, Jake. You can do this, she whispered under her breath. Just as they secured the area, the simulation began to shift. The enemy forces regrouped, and Lira could see Jake's team struggling against overwhelming odds. We have to help him, one of her officers exclaimed. No, Lira replied firmly. We trust him. He's doing exactly what he set out to do. Finally, just as the enemy closed in, Jake activated the distraction he had prepared. A series of blinding flashes and loud explosions erupted throughout the base, causing chaos. In that moment, he sprinted toward the extraction point, leaping through the door just as it sealed behind him. Jake, Lira exclaimed, relief flooding her. As the simulation ended, the room erupted into applause. Lira turned to Jake, who was catching his breath. You did it. You proved yourself. Jake smiled, a mixture of pride and exhaustion on his face. We did it together. Lira felt the atmosphere shift. The skeptical crew members began to see the potential in their alliance. Zahn, who had been the most vocal against Jake, stepped forward. I have to admit, I was wrong. You showed bravery and resourcefulness, and I respect that. Thank you, Jake replied, extending a hand. This is just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, Lira and Jake's alliance continued to strengthen. They implemented joint training programs and initiated cultural exchanges between their species. The lines that once divided them blurred further, replaced by a shared goal of peace. Lira often reflected on their journey, from a simple interrogation to forming a powerful alliance that could change the fate of their worlds. With each passing day, she found herself not just respecting Jake as a leader, but as a friend. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars, Jake turned to Lira. You know, I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can achieve together. Lira smiled, hope igniting within her. Agreed. Together, we can build a legacy that both our peoples can be proud of. And as they looked out into the vastness of space, they knew their journey was only beginning. Together, They would navigate the challenges ahead, not just as allies, but as pioneers of a new era of understanding and cooperation between humans and Kaltharians. Weeks passed, and the joint task force thrived. Lira and Jake worked tirelessly to solidify their alliance, conducting training drills, sharing knowledge, and planning joint missions. However, beneath the surface of progress, shadows of doubt lingered among some crew members, and Lira sensed the tension growing. One evening, Lira gathered her officers for a briefing. "We have received intel about a potential threat from a rogue faction that opposes our alliance. They're planning to disrupt our operations. We need to stay vigilant." "Isn't this what Jake's team is here for?" Zahn interjected, his skepticism still evident. "Can we really rely on them to have our backs when it counts?" Jake stepped forward, determination in his eyes. "I understand your concerns, Zahn, but we're in this together. I'm not just fighting for humanity, I'm fighting for both our species. We can't let fear divide us." Lira nodded in agreement. "This is our chance to prove that our alliance is stronger than their animosity. Let's prepare a reconnaissance mission to gather more information on this rogue faction." Gathering intel. The following day, Lira and Jake assembled a small team to infiltrate the suspected base of the rogue faction. The mission was risky, but they knew they had to act quickly to prevent any sabotage against their efforts. As they approached the base, a sense of unease settled over the team. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the unspoken worries of what could go wrong. Lira glanced at Jake, whose expression was resolute. "We can do this," he assured her. They moved stealthily, navigating the shadows until they reached a vantage point. Peering through the cracked viewport, they saw a group of aliens gathered inside, their faces grim and determined. Lira activated her comms. "Let's listen in." As they tuned in, the conversation revealed the faction's plan. "We cannot allow the Kaltharians and humans to join forces," a voice said, echoing with malice. "We must strike before they become too powerful. Our alliance is a threat to our existence." Jake clenched his fists. "They're plotting to sabotage our mission. We need to warn the others." Lira nodded. "Let's gather as much intel as we can before retreating." As they listened, they documented details about the faction's numbers and weaponry. Every bit of information could be crucial in countering their plans. But just as they were about to leave, an alarm blared, shattering their moment of stealth. "Quick! We need to move!" Lira shouted, urgency surging through her veins. They raced away from the viewport, adrenaline pumping. As they navigated the corridors, Lira felt a surge of panic. "This way," she directed, leading them down a narrow passage. Jake was right behind her, but suddenly they were ambushed. A group of armed rogues appeared, blocking their escape route. Well, look what we have here," one of them sneered, brandishing a weapon. "Kaltharian and human, working together. This is the end of your little alliance." Without hesitation, Lira activated her combat training. "Jake, cover me," she shouted as she moved into a defensive stance. Jake quickly assessed the situation. On it. He moved to a nearby crate for cover, returning fire with precision. The sounds of blasters and shouts echoed through the halls, creating chaos around them. Lira fought valiantly, but she felt the weight of their predicament. They had to escape or risk losing everything they had built. "We need to fall back," she urged. As they battled their way through the ambush, Lira could feel her heart racing. The determination to protect their alliance fueled her every move. Finally, they reached a service hatch. "In here," Lira called, diving through the opening. Once inside, they sealed the hatch behind them and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. "Did we lose them?" Jake asked, his voice strained. Lira listened intently, relieved to hear the sounds of pursuit fading. "For now, yes. But we need to report back to the ship immediately." As they navigated through the cramped maintenance tunnels, Jake turned to Lira. "That was too close. They won't stop at just a simple attack. They'll come after us again." "We have to warn the others," Lira replied, determination hardening her resolve. "We need a plan to counter their moves." Once back on the ship, Lira and Jake rushed to the command center. The atmosphere was tense, the crew anxiously awaiting their report. "Commander, what happened out there?" Zahn demanded, his eyes wide with concern. "We encountered the rogue faction," Lira explained, her voice steady. "They're plotting to sabotage our alliance. We need to prepare for a potential attack." The crew erupted into murmurs, uncertainty hanging in the air. Lira could see the fear in their faces. "Listen," she continued, raising her voice to cut through the noise. "This is exactly what they want to sow discord among us. We must unite now more than ever." Jake stepped forward, Lyra's right. We've faced danger together, and we can do it again. This is a test of our resolve, and I believe we can come out stronger. Slowly, the crew began to rally around Lira and Jake. They understood the stakes, and a renewed sense of purpose filled the room. Lira could see the tension easing as they focused on the shared goal of protecting their alliance. "We need to fortify our defenses," Zahn proposed, his voice filled with conviction, "and gather intelligence on their movements. We can't let them take us by surprise again." Lira nodded, grateful for the shift in perspective. "Let's assign teams to monitor their activities. Jake and I will lead a mission to gather more intel. The rest of you will focus on strengthening our security measures." As they strategized, Lira felt the unity in the room. They were no longer just Kaltharians and humans, they were allies, bound by a common cause. The challenges ahead were daunting, but together they would face whatever came their way. As preparations continued, Lira and Jake worked closely to build their plans. In the quiet moments between missions, they found solace in their growing friendship. They shared stories, laughter, and aspirations for a future where their species could thrive together. One evening, as they reviewed data on a holographic display, Jake turned to Lira. "You know, I never expected to find this kind of camaraderie in the midst of a crisis. It's refreshing." Lira smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I feel the same. Our differences make us stronger, and together, we can redefine what it means to be allies." Just then, the ship's alarm blared, cutting through their moment of connection. "All crew to battle stations." A voice echoed over the intercom. Lyra's heart raced. This is it. The rogue faction has launched their attack. The crew sprang into action, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Lira and Jake rushed to the command center, where they quickly assessed the situation. The rogue faction had managed to breach their perimeter, and enemy ships were closing in fast. "Divert all power to shields," Lira commanded, her voice steady. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Jake monitored the enemy vessels, his experience shining through. "We need to flank them. If we can cut off their escape route, we can disable their ships." "Agreed," Lira replied, her heart pounding. "Let's do it." As they worked together, Lira felt a sense of unity among her crew. They were ready to fight for their future, to protect what they had built together. The battle would be fierce, but they would face it head-on, united in their resolve. With their battle plan in place, Lira and Jake coordinated the crew's efforts. The ship shuddered as the first enemy blasts hit their shields, but the Kaltharian technology held strong. "Return fire," Lira shouted, her voice ringing with authority. The crew sprang into action, launching counterattacks against the incoming vessels. Jake navigated the tactical display, relaying information to the gunners. "Focus on the ships at the rear. They're trying to flank us." As the battle raged on, Lira could see the determination in her crew's eyes. They fought as one, each member playing their part. She felt a surge of pride, knowing that they were not just defending their ship, but their newfound alliance. Just as it seemed, the tide was turning in their favor. Lira noticed a larger enemy vessel moving toward their flank. "Jake, we have to divert our firepower to that ship," she called out. "On it," Jake replied, redirecting the tactical displays. "All hands, target the larger vessel." As the crew focused their efforts, the battle intensified. Lira felt the pressure mounting, but she refused to back down. They had come too far to let this moment slip away. Finally, after what felt like hours, their combined firepower took down the enemy ship. Cheers erupted in the command center, a wave of relief washing over them. "Great work, everyone," Lira exclaimed, her heart swelling with pride. "But stay alert. We need to secure the area." As the remaining enemy vessels retreated, Lira took a moment to breathe. The battle had been fierce, but they had emerged victorious. "We did it," she murmured, glancing at Jake, who was grinning from ear to ear. "Together," he replied, his voice filled with triumph. But Lira knew that the fight was not over. The rogue faction would not give up easily. They had to remain vigilant, not just for themselves, but for the future they were building together. As they began to assess the damage and tend to the wounded, Lira turned to her crew. "This battle was just the beginning. We've shown them that we will not back down. We need to solidify our defenses and continue to strengthen our alliance." The crew nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united as one. In the days that followed, they focused on recovery and rebuilding. Lira and Jake worked side by side, strategizing their next moves and fostering the unity they had fought so hard to achieve. One evening, as they reviewed their strategies, Lira turned to Jake. "You know, despite everything, I feel hopeful. This alliance can be something truly special." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "We can change the narrative. Together, we can prove that cooperation is stronger than conflict." As they shared ideas and dreams for their future, Lira felt a deep connection with Jake. They were not just allies, they were pioneers on a journey to reshape the galaxy. And as they gazed out into the vastness of space, Lira knew that their journey was only just beginning. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead, building a legacy of unity and understanding that would last for generations to come. In the aftermath of the battle, Lira and Jake dedicated themselves to ensuring the long-term stability of their alliance. The days were filled with planning sessions, training drills, and discussions about how to address the growing threats from the rogue faction. Each moment served to strengthen their resolve. During one particularly intense strategy meeting, Lira addressed her crew. "We have to anticipate their next move. We've shown our strength, but we need to be prepared for retaliation. Our alliance is a beacon of hope, and they will see us as a threat." Zahn stood up, his voice firm. "We need to increase patrols and gather more intel. If we know where they plan to strike next, we can preempt their attacks." Jake nodded in agreement. "We should also reach out to other factions who might be sympathetic to our cause. An alliance of more than 2 species could create a formidable front against the rogue elements." Lira felt a spark of excitement at the thought. Expanding our coalition could provide us with additional resources and allies. "Let's start reaching out to the neighboring systems. We can host a summit to discuss our shared goals." Days later, preparations for the summit were underway. The ship buzzed with activity as Kaltharians and humans alike worked to create a welcoming environment for their guests. Lira was amazed at how far they had come. What once felt like an uneasy partnership was now a thriving collaboration. As the guests arrived, representatives from several neighboring systems, Lira felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was a pivotal moment for their alliance. "Welcome, everyone," Lira began, addressing the assembly. "We are here today, not just to discuss our individual interests, but to forge a coalition built on mutual respect and cooperation. The threat we face is greater than any one of us can tackle alone." Jake stepped forward, his voice steady. "Together, we can create a unified front that protects our shared interests. This summit is the first step toward a new era of collaboration among our species." The discussions that followed were both enlightening and challenging. Each representative brought their unique perspectives, and debates often sparked passionate responses. Lira and Jake facilitated the dialogue, ensuring that everyone's voice was heard. During one heated exchange, a representative from the Zarkon system raised concerns. "We've seen how quickly alliances can crumble. What guarantees do we have that this will be different?" Lira took a deep breath, understanding the fears behind the question. "Trust takes time to build, but our shared experiences have already laid a foundation. We must commit to transparency and mutual support. Our struggles against the rogue faction are a common threat. Our victories will be shared." As the summit continued, Lira could see tide shifting. Attendees began to envision the possibilities of working together. New partnerships were forming, and even some initial rivalries softened. Amid the discussions, a representative from the Veridon system, a large and influential faction, stood up. "What if we created a defense pact? We could pool our resources and share intelligence to counter any aggressive moves from the rogue faction." Jake's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "That's an excellent idea. A formalized agreement could not only enhance our defense, but also reinforce our commitment to one another." The representatives murmured their agreement, and soon the room buzzed with excitement as they brainstormed the specifics of the pact. Lira felt her heart swell with hope. They were truly on the cusp of something monumental. After hours of discussion, the representatives finalized the details of the Pact of Unity. The agreement outlined cooperative defense strategies, intelligence sharing, and the establishment of joint training exercises. Lira and Jake stood before the assembly as the pact was formally signed, the weight of the moment settling over them. "This is just the beginning," Lira declared, her voice strong. "We are taking a stand against division and fear. Together, we will forge a new path toward peace." As applause echoed through the chamber, Lira caught Jake's eye. They shared a moment of unspoken understanding, a recognition of how far they had come together. However, their newfound hope was short-lived. The very next day, they received alarming intel. The rogue faction had launched a series of attacks against several smaller outposts across the region. Their aggressive strategy was aimed at undermining the alliance's Lira and Jake had worked so hard to build. Lira felt a knot of anxiety form in her stomach. "We need to respond immediately," she said, urgency fueling her words. "If we don't act quickly, they'll send a message that we're weak." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "We should send a joint task force to protect those outposts and gather intel on their movements. We can't let them continue unchecked." Within hours, they mobilized a diverse task force comprised of Kaltharian and human soldiers, alongside representatives from their new allies. The atmosphere was charged with determination as they prepared for the mission. As they deployed, Lira took a moment to reflect. She had never imagined that her journey would lead to such unity among different species. They were not just fighting for their individual survival, but for a shared vision of peace and cooperation. When they arrived at the first outpost, the scene was chaotic. The rogue faction had already laid waste to the facility, but the remnants of the local defense force were still fighting back. Lira and Jake quickly coordinated their forces, issuing commands and directing their troops. The battle was intense, with blaster fire illuminating the darkened sky. Lira fought alongside her crew, adrenaline surging through her veins. She felt the weight of responsibility for her allies' lives, driving her to push harder. "Cover me," she shouted to Jake as she dashed toward a group of enemy combatants. He nodded, returning fire to keep them at bay. As the conflict raged on, Lira saw her allies fighting valiantly, proving their commitment to the pact. She felt a surge of pride for everyone involved. They were truly united, each person doing their part for a common cause. But the rogue faction was relentless. They had anticipated the coalition's response and had come prepared. Just when it seemed they were gaining the upper hand, Lira saw an enemy ship preparing to bomb their position. "Jake, we need to take that ship down," Lira shouted, panic rising in her throat. "On it," he replied, scanning the surroundings for a solution. He quickly devised a plan. "If we can disable their weapon systems, we might be able to ground them." Lira nodded, her heart racing. "Let's do it." With precision and teamwork, they executed their plan. Jake led a small team to flank the ship, while Lira coordinated the attack from the ground. Just as the enemy prepared to fire, their ship's systems malfunctioned under the coalition's coordinated assault. The enemy vessels spiraled out of control, crashing to the ground with a thunderous boom. The tide of the battle began to turn, their enemies disoriented and reeling from the loss. With renewed vigor, the coalition pressed forward, pushing back the rogue faction. One by one, they dismantled the enemy positions, reclaiming the outpost. As the last of the rogue fighters retreated, cheers erupted among the coalition forces. Lira and Jake stood together, catching their breath. "We did it," Jake said, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Lira nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "This victory is just the beginning. We've shown that together, we can withstand any threat." As they surveyed the wreckage of the battlefield, Lira knew that the fight was far from over. But they had proven their strength and resolve, forging a path toward a brighter future for their peoples. In the days that followed, Lira and Jake worked tirelessly to solidify their newfound alliance. They organized follow-up missions to ensure the rogue faction would not regroup and retaliate. As they reflected on their experiences, Lira realized that each battle brought them closer, not just as allies, but as friends. The trust they had built was invaluable, and it gave her hope for the future. One evening, after a long day of strategizing, Jake turned to Lira. "What if we hosted a festival to celebrate our unity? A way to bring our people together, share our cultures, and reinforce our bonds." Lira's eyes lit up at the idea. "That's brilliant. It would help strengthen our ties even further. We need to show everyone that this alliance isn't just about defense. It's about collaboration and friendship." In the weeks leading up to the festival, excitement filled the air. Crews from both species worked together to prepare food, set up decorations, and plan cultural exchanges. The event was a celebration of their shared journey and commitment to cooperation. On the day of the festival, laughter and music echoed throughout the base. Kaltharians and humans mingled, sharing stories and traditions. Lira watched as children played together, their laughter a reminder of the hope they were building for the future. As the sun began to set, Lira stood beside Jake, taking in the vibrant scene. "This is what we fought for," she said, her heart swelling with pride. Jake smiled. "We've come so far, and it's just the beginning. Together, we'll continue to pave the way for a brighter future." With the festival serving as a symbol of their unity, Lira knew they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their journey was one of courage, resilience, and the belief that cooperation could triumph over conflict. As the stars twinkled above, Lira felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would shape the destiny of their galaxy, building bridges where there were once walls. And no matter the obstacles, they would face them as one. As the festival came to a close, Lira and Jake felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The event had not only celebrated their alliance, but had also strengthened the bonds among their people. Laughter and joy filled the air, creating a vibrant atmosphere that seemed to signal a new dawn. However, amid the festivities, a sense of unease lingered in the back of Lyra's mind. The rogue faction, although temporarily set back, was still out there. She turned to Jake, her brow furrowed with concern. "We can't let our guard down. They're likely regrouping and planning their next move." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "We need to keep our intelligence network strong. Let's assign teams to monitor their communications and movements. The last thing we want is to be caught off guard." In the days that followed, Lira and Jake worked tirelessly to gather intel on the rogue faction. They deployed reconnaissance ships and enlisted the help of allies, ensuring they were always one step ahead. One evening, Lira received a distress signal from a distant outpost. "Jake, we need to act. They're under attack. If we don't send help now, we could lose everything we've built." Jake's eyes narrowed with determination. "Let's mobilize a task force immediately. We'll show them that we won't let our allies fall." Within hours, they launched a fleet toward the outpost. As they approached, the scene was chaotic. Flames and debris littered the landscape, and the sound of blaster fire echoed through the air. "Deploy our forces," Lira commanded, her heart racing. "We have to provide support and evacuate any survivors." The coalition's troops moved with precision, coordinating their efforts to push back the rogue fighters. Lira felt a surge of adrenaline as they engaged in fierce combat, her training kicking in as she fought alongside her crew. However, this time, the rogue faction was prepared. They employed guerrilla tactics, ambushing the coalition forces and attempting to divide them. Lira realized that the enemy had learned from their previous encounters and was now more cunning. "Jake, we need to regroup," she shouted, narrowly dodging blaster fire. "They're trying to separate us." Jake's voice rang out over the comms. "Fall back to the central position. We'll form a defensive line and push them back together." As they fell back, Lira could see the determination in her crew's eyes. They fought not just for survival, but for each other and the future they had envisioned. They established a perimeter, holding strong against the onslaught of rogue fighters. But as the battle wore on, Lira noticed a troubling trend. The enemy was relentless, and their numbers seemed endless. "We can't hold them off forever," she muttered, her heart racing. Just then, a familiar voice crackled through the comms. It was Zahn. "Commander, we've detected a larger enemy ship entering the sector. They're deploying more troops." Lira's stomach sank. "We need to buy time for the evacuation. Everyone, hold the line." As the battle raged on, Lira devised a plan. "We need to create a diversion," she told Jake. "If we can draw their attention away from the evacuation zone, we might give our allies a chance to escape." Jake nodded, understanding the risks. "I'll lead a small team to flank their position while you coordinate the evacuation." "Be careful," Lira said, concern etched on her face. "We can't lose anyone else." With a final nod, Jake gathered a few trusted soldiers and dashed toward the enemy's flank. Lira focused on rallying the remaining troops, ensuring everyone understood their roles in the evacuation. As Jake's team engaged the enemy, Lira's heart pounded in her chest. The battle was fierce, and she watched as they fought bravely, but she could see the enemy closing in. Suddenly, one of the rogue fighters targeted Jake's position. "Jake!" Lira shouted, her voice filled with panic. Before she could react, a blinding flash illuminated the battlefield. A blast exploded near Jake, sending debris flying. Lira felt her heart drop as she searched for any sign of him. "Hold the line," she yelled to her troops, trying to maintain focus despite the chaos. With a renewed determination, Lira pushed forward, engaging the enemy with fierce tenacity. She fought not just for victory, but for the friends and allies who had stood by her side. When the dust finally settled, Lira surveyed the battlefield. They had managed to hold off the rogue faction long enough for the evacuation to succeed. But at a great cost, many lives had been lost, and the coalition forces were weary and battered. As the wounded were tended to, Lira felt an overwhelming sense of grief. "We fought for our future, and yet..." Her voice trailed off, the weight of the losses heavy on her heart. Jake stumbled toward her, bloodied but alive. "Lira, we held them off, but we need to regroup. They'll be back." Relief flooded through her. mixed with sorrow. "I thought I lost you," she breathed, embracing him tightly. "We can't keep losing people like this." Jake nodded, determination gleaming in his eyes. "We need to honor their sacrifice. This fight isn't over. We'll rebuild, and we'll do it for them." In the days that followed, Lira and Jake worked tirelessly to rebuild their forces and honor their fallen comrades. They organized memorials and shared stories, celebrating the lives of those they had lost. The coalition grew stronger, united by a shared purpose. With each passing day, they strategized and prepared for the next confrontation, vowing to protect their alliance and the future they had fought for. As they trained together, Lira felt a renewed sense of hope. "We can't allow fear to dictate our actions. We must be brave, united, and ready for anything." Jake smiled at her, a light in the darkness. "Together, we can overcome any challenge. We've already proven that." With their losses weighing heavily on them, Lira and Jake knew they needed a new approach. "We can't just wait for them to attack again," Lira said during a strategy meeting with their allies. "We need to be proactive." Zahn suggested, "What if we infiltrated their ranks? Gather intelligence from within. It could give us the advantage we need." Jake looked thoughtful. "A risky move, but it might work. If we can disrupt their operations from the inside, we might be able to shift the tide in our favor." They began planning the infiltration mission, choosing skilled individuals from both the Kaltharian and human forces. Lira felt a mix of excitement and dread as they prepared for the operation. It was a dangerous gamble, but they had to take risks to ensure their survival. On the day of the mission, Lira gathered the team. "You're doing this for all of us. We believe in you and will support you from here. Stay safe, and remember, communication is key." With steely determination, the team set off, ready to face the challenges ahead. As the infiltration team maneuvered through enemy territory, Lira watched their progress from the command center. She felt a mix of anxiety and hope, knowing that their success could change everything. Hours passed, and just when it seemed they might be discovered, the team managed to gain access to a command facility. They quickly began gathering intel, but then chaos erupted. Alarms blared, signaling a breach. "Time to move," the team leader shouted, leading them through the corridors. The mission had turned into a race against time. As they fought their way out, Lira's heart raced. She could see the determination in their eyes, the willingness to risk everything for the sake of their alliance. Just when it seemed they were cornered, a surprise wave of Kaltharian and human forces arrived, covering the team's escape. With newfound strength, they pushed through the enemy lines, emerging into the open air. Back at the base, Lira and Jake welcomed the team with open arms. "You did it!" Lira exclaimed, tears of relief in her eyes. This could change everything. The team shared their findings, revealing critical details about the rogue faction's operations. They learned of a planned attack on a crucial resource hub, one that could cripple their alliance if not thwarted. "We need to act fast," Jake urged. "If we can preemptively strike, we can put an end to their plans before they even begin." As they prepared for the impending confrontation, Lira felt a sense of unity among her crew. They had faced unimaginable odds, but together they had grown stronger. The losses had been painful, but they had forged a resilient spirit. On the eve of the battle, Lira gathered her team. "Tomorrow, we face the rogue faction head-on. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who believes in our cause. We will show them the power of unity." With a chorus of agreement, they prepared themselves for the battle ahead, knowing that this could be their chance to turn the tide once and for all. The stakes were high, but so was their determination. The battle for their future was about to begin. As dawn broke over the horizon, the coalition forces gathered, a united front against the rogue faction. Lira stood before her troops, feeling the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders. The losses they had suffered weighed heavily on her heart, but today, they would fight not just for survival, but for justice and hope. "Today, we reclaim our future," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. "We will show them what it means to stand together, no matter the odds." Jake stood at her side, his expression fierce. "We've trained for this moment. Trust in your skills, trust in each other, and remember why we fight. For our families, our allies, and the galaxy we believe in." With their battle plans in place, the coalition forces moved stealthily toward the resource hub. They knew the rogue faction would be fortified, but they were determined to catch them off guard. Lira felt a surge of adrenaline as they approached the enemy stronghold, the air thick with anticipation. As they neared their target, Lira's heart raced. "Stay sharp. Remember, we need to disable their defenses before we engage fully." The Coalition's recon units had done their job well, identifying weak points in the enemy's perimeter. Lira felt a sense of pride in her team's resilience and creativity. They had turned the tide of this conflict through sheer determination and collaboration. Now, Lira shouted, and with that command, they launched their assault. Blaster fire erupted as the Coalition forces engaged the rogue fighters, who were taken by surprise. Lira led the charge, her heart pounding as she navigated the chaos of battle. The sound of blaster fire and explosions filled the air. Lira moved with purpose, coordinating her troops as they fought side by side. The stakes were high, and every moment counted. They had to seize the initiative and maintain the momentum. As they pushed deeper into the enemy lines, Lira felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with fear. This was it, the moment they had trained for, the moment that could define their future. As they fought their way through, Lira spotted a familiar figure amidst the chaos, the rogue leader, Kranth. He stood defiantly at the center of the fray, barking orders to his troops, his presence imposing. Lyra's heart raced. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. "Jake, I'm going after Kranth," she shouted, determination fueling her voice. "Cover me." Jake nodded, rallying a group of soldiers to provide support. "Stay safe, Lira." With renewed focus, Lira pushed through the throng of fighters, her sights set on Kranth. He had been a thorn in their side for far too long, and today she would confront him. As Lira reached Kranth, their eyes locked. The rogue leader smirked, confidence radiating from him. "You think you can defeat me, human? You're outnumbered and outclassed." Lira squared her shoulders, her resolve unshaken. "I'm not here to defeat you, I'm here to stop you. Your reign of terror ends today." With a flick of his wrist, Kranth signaled his soldiers to attack. Blaster fire erupted around them as Lira dove for cover. She could feel the weight of her team's hopes on her shoulders. The fight was fierce and chaotic. Lira maneuvered with agility, returning fire while staying aware of her surroundings. Kranth was a skilled fighter, but she was fueled by a purpose that surpassed mere survival. Each move she made was calculated, a reflection of her training and determination. "Why do you fight for these weaklings?" Kranth taunted, dodging a blast. "They'll never understand the true strength of power." Lira shot back, "Strength isn't about domination. It's about unity. Together, we're stronger than any one person's ambition." With each exchange, Lira felt the tide turning in her favor. She had learned from her experiences, and the support of her team resonated in her actions. As Kranth charged at her, she anticipated his move, sidestepping and delivering a swift counterattack. The fight intensified, each of them pushing to outmaneuver the other. Lira could sense the desperation in Kranth's attacks. He was losing ground, and the Coalition forces were gaining momentum. "Your time is up, Kranth," Lira shouted, seizing the opportunity to deliver a decisive blow. With a final powerful strike, she disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. The fight drained from his eyes, replaced by shock and disbelief. "Why?" he gasped, struggling beneath her. "Why fight for them?" Lira's expression softened, her voice steady. "Because we believe in a future where everyone has a place, a future where cooperation conquers hate. You could have been a part of that." As Kranth's forces began to retreat, Lira felt a swell of triumph. The battle was turning in their favor, and the Coalition was gaining ground. She signaled to her team, who surged forward, pushing the remaining rogue fighters back. "Keep pressing," Jake shouted, rallying their forces. "We can't let them regroup." With every foot gained, the Coalition's resolve strengthened. Lira's heart soared as she saw the hope return to the eyes of her comrades. They had fought valiantly, and it was paying off. Once the dust settled, the Coalition stood victorious. The rogue faction had been driven back, and the resource hub was secured. Cheers erupted among the troops, a testament to their strength and unity. Lira felt a mixture of relief and grief wash over her. While they had won the battle, they had also lost friends along the way. She turned to Jake, who approached her, his expression serious yet proud. "We did it, Lira. We really did it," he said, embracing her. "But at what cost?" Lira replied, her voice soft. "We have so much to mourn." Jake nodded, understanding the weight of their victory. "We'll honor them. We'll build a future worthy of their sacrifice." As the Coalition regrouped, Lira took a moment to reflect on their journey. They had faced insurmountable odds, but through cooperation and determination, they had prevailed. They were no longer just humans and Kaltharians. They were a united force. "We can't stop here," Lira addressed her team. "This victory is just the beginning. We need to ensure our alliance remains strong and that we work toward a brighter future." With renewed purpose, they began to plan their next steps. The galaxy had a long way to go toward healing, but Lira felt hopeful. Together, they could build a world where differences were celebrated, and peace was a reality. As they started to rebuild, Lira looked out over the horizon, her heart filled with determination. They would honor the memories of those they lost by creating a future that would make them proud. "We'll show the galaxy what it means to stand united," Lira whispered, her spirit unyielding. "No matter the challenges, we will prevail." With that promise in her heart, Lira knew they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Their journey was far from over, but together, they would write a new chapter, one of hope, resilience, and unity. In the aftermath of the battle, the Coalition began the difficult process of rebuilding. Lira, Jake, and their comrades worked tirelessly to restore the resource hub, transforming it from a site of conflict into a beacon of hope. The community of Kalthar stood by their side, eager to foster a new alliance grounded in mutual respect and shared goals. "Let's make this place not just functional, but a symbol of what we've achieved together," Lira proposed during a meeting with the Coalition leaders and Kaltharian representatives. "We should incorporate both our cultures into the design. It should reflect our unity." The Kaltharians nodded in agreement. "A place where our two peoples can thrive, share knowledge, and cultivate a lasting peace. We will build it together," one of their leaders, Miri, responded, her eyes shining with optimism. As they worked side by side, Lira and her team learned more about Kaltharian traditions, while their new allies became fascinated with human innovations. They exchanged stories, recipes, and techniques, creating a vibrant tapestry of cultural understanding. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lira joined a Kaltharian feast. The scents of unfamiliar spices filled the air, and laughter echoed as they shared their meals. It was a moment of joy amidst the lingering scars of battle. "Your food is incredible," Jake exclaimed, trying a dish that combined Kaltharian fruits with human grains. "We should make this a regular tradition." Miri laughed, her melodic voice brightening the atmosphere. "And we will teach you our dances next. It's a way to celebrate life and unity."